Hey gang, Jane here. Welcome back to another crochet project tutorial. And if you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me as we explore creativity through crochet. Today is the first video in a short series where I'm going to walk you through the techniques involved in making the Eclipse sweater. You can find the Eclipse Square pattern that I'll be using in this sweater for free on my blog and the video tutorial here on my YouTube channel. You can find the full list of supplies along with tips and diagrams over on my blog, and as with all my projects, the full PDF pattern that includes colorway charts, diagrams, and more is available in my shop. All links are in the description below. For this sweater pictured, I used Mary Maxim Mellowspun DK. The colors for the first colorway version are buff as my main, then contrasts are Mink, Taupe, Nutmeg, Spruce, and Dark Oak. In this version, I only used the contrast colors on rounds 2 and 4, and as in my typical fashion, every square is different. In today's tutorial, I'll be making the same sweater using the same yarn, but I call this colorway version 2. Because of course I can never do the same thing twice. My method of creating a pattern is to trial and error my way through the first one, and then I prove everything by making a second one in a different colorway. And hopefully it gives you guys some inspiration to explore your own colorways as well. In this version, I use a different color for each round until we get to rounds 5 and 6, which will be done in one color, but again, different for every square. The nice thing with the squares being all different colors is that I can show you the join with a little more clarity than if all the squares were off-white. I've added another color to this version as well called Slate, and I'll be using Taupe for the main color instead of buff. Basically, I didn't have enough of the buff, so I switched it up to Taupe. The techniques I'm going to show you on how to assemble the sweater can be used for any square that's approximately 5 3/4 inches, or if you want a bigger oversized sweater, you could use a larger square. I've used the same techniques with my summer side square to make this sweater with nice results. In that case, I use a worsted weight yarn with a 6-inch square, and it did come out a little thicker, but nice and cozy and a more solid stitch pattern for the cooler weather. In the written pattern, I call for a 4.5mm crochet hook used throughout, and the stitch gauge in the square size of 5 3/4 is based on that. However, you'll probably see I'm using a 5mm crochet hook in this tutorial for the joining, and that's simply because I like to give it a looser feel. It's just personal preference. Really depends on how tight or loose you crochet, and I always say to go with whatever hook works best for you. In addition to the hook and the yarn, I'll be using stitch markers to help indicate the stitches to work into as we work through the second row of the join as you go method. You can use split stitch markers like I have here. I got this little box at Michael's, but you can just use paper clips. They work well too. And you'll also need a pair of scissors and a darning needle. Today will be the join as you go technique, which is a method of crocheting the squares together. We'll use this method for making the front, the back, and both the sleeves. To start with, I'm using my Eclipse Square, working rounds 1 through 6. The video tutorial for my Eclipse Square can be found on my channel, and I'll leave the link for that down below in the description. So let's get into the techniques. I've written this pattern for 6 sizes. For the small, medium, and large versions, you'll need 24 squares total, 6 for each of the back, front, and each sleeve. For the XL, 2XL, and 3XL, you'll need 28 squares, so 4 more, 8 for each of the back and front, and 6 for each sleeve. The 3 smaller sizes will use a 3x2 layout for the back and the front, as well as the same for the sleeves. The 3 larger sizes will use a 4x2 layout for the back and the front, and the same 3x2 layout for the sleeves as for the smaller size. If you're following my written pattern, then it has the diagrams and square placements done for you. Once you've decided what order you'd like to join your squares in, we can get started working on the back. I'll walk you through this piece step by step, and then I'll leave you to work the remaining pieces on your own in the exact same way. I'll be making the medium size, so I'll need 6 of my squares to start with to make my first rectangle. Once I have these squares done and I have them laid out the way that I want, I will often put them on a ring in the right order so that I know this is the order I want. This is square 1, and then I move from there, square 2, square 3. In this case, I'm not going to block them before I join them. I'm going to join them into a rectangle. I'll decide from there, and I may just wait and block the entire sweater when it's finished, because it is such a dainty stitch when you get down to the double knit yarns that you don't want to create more movement than you need. Because when you start to do the join as you go method, that actually takes your squares and squares them out, because now they're joined into a rectangle. Now, following this diagram, we'll be joining the squares starting in the upper right and working our way across the first row of squares to the left. Then we'll start the second row again at the right and join them working towards the left again. There are letters on this diagram, A through D, and I'll be referring to these as I work, so you can follow along with where the repeating section will be. Now grab your first batch of squares and let's start joining our first piece. So I start with the first square that I've chosen and my main color I'm going to use here, which in this case is this nice beige color. I have the top right hand corner right here, this chain 3 space. This is where I'm going to join. So I join with a standing single crochet, and this is considered point A on my diagram. Next I will chain 2, and I'm going to work my yarn in as I go. Single crochet in the next chain space, so working in each of the chain spaces, not the stitches, just the chain spaces. Single crochet in that next chain space, chain 2. And I'm going to do that 8 times. So this is my first one, and we'll continue on and do 8 more times. Single crochet in the chain space and chain 2. Just like that. Single crochet, chain 2, go to the next chain space right here. Single crochet, chain 2. Next chain space, single crochet, chain 2. And I'm going to leave my yarn now because it's worked in. Next one over here, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in the next one, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2. And that will be 8 times. So let's take a look. The single crochet was before we reached point A. We consider point A. Then we're at point A. Chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, and then repeat the single crochet, chain 2 8 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now we're at point B. We want to single crochet, chain 3, single crochet into this chain 3 space right here. Single crochet, chain 3, and single crochet. Now we rotate our square, which it kind of already is, and we're going to work down this edge. Chain 2, single crochet in the next chain space, and chain 2. So just like we did across the top, we're now going to do the same down this edge, and we do that 8 times until we reach the next corner. Ending with that chain 2, and we've reached the next corner. We're now at point C. Single crochet in this chain 3 space, chain 1, and flip our piece so the wrong side is now facing us. And now we're going to take our next square, and our right side is facing us, but the wrong sides are together. Place it right on top of the square you're working on. Now we're at point D. Single crochet in the front corner chain 3 space of the new square, chain 2, go to the back square and go into this next chain space, single crochet, chain 2, back to the front, next chain space, single crochet, chain 2, back to the back, next chain space, single crochet, chain 2. We're going to do that 8 times, the front and then the back. So keep moving along until you've completed that 8 times. Only working in the chain spaces, once on the front and then once on the back. So the stitch kind of zigzags between the 2 squares. So you end at the back, single crochet in that last chain space, chain 2, that's your 8th time. Then you come to the front and you work a single crochet in the corner of the front square, or the new square as I would call it, chain 1, single crochet in the corner of the back square, chain 2, and now we rotate the piece so that we're going to be working along this edge, and we single crochet again in this front corner, and we are at point A. So that was your repeat. A to B to C to D, this is just a short one, and then all the way back to A. And then we repeat that. So repeat that for this next square. And then on the next square after that, this will be the third one for the small, medium, and large. And if you're doing the extra large, 2XL, and 3XL, you'll have another square in there you're making. But when you get to the final square of your row, you'll be here. You'll have added the square in. You'll do A to B and B to C. And this is where I'll meet you because we're going to come back across the bottom. So again, repeat the letters A through D, back to A for each of the squares, 3 for this size and 4 for the larger sizes. And then you do A to B, and you won't do C, you'll just complete B, and I will meet you back here at the corner, and we will come back across the bottom. See you there. So I have my 3 squares joined, or if you're doing 4, you've ended at the last square of the row right here, and this is where we would normally start C. So if I pick this up, we're going to work along here, and actually this is where we bring in our stitch markers because we're going to want to use them at these places. So when we come back, we know what stitches we're working into. So just keep those off to the side. I'm going to pick up my work and show you what we do from here. So the end of B actually takes you to this chain 2 and you haven't worked the corner yet. In our long edge that I call it, we started by doing a single crochet in this chain 3, chain 3, and another single crochet in that chain 3, which turns our corner so we can now work down this edge. So our long edge works like this. We're going to chain 2, single crochet in the next chain space, chain 2, and we're going to do that 8 times. It's going to take us over to this corner here. Single crochet in the next chain space, chain 2, just like we did around the outside edges. Make sure you don't miss any of the chain spaces. They're not all the same size. Some of them are a little bit different shape, but this kind of evens everything out. So there's our 8th one, and it takes us back to this corner of the last square. We want to single crochet in this corner. So you've already single crocheted into it over here. Now we're working along this edge, single crochet into that corner, chain 2. Now look at the join that you did here. This was C and this was D. There was a chain 1 in the middle of those. That's where you want to go into right here. And you want to single crochet. Now we're going to place a stitch marker in this chain 2 space right here. Slip it into that chain 2 space, and that one is marked. Chain 2, single crochet in the next corner of the next square, and we want to mark this space as well. So grab another one, and you can use a different color if you have them, and mark that chain 2 space. So take a look here what we did. We marked this chain 2 space, single crocheted in the join, and marked this chain 2 space. These are the 2 spaces we're going to work into when we come back to join the squares to this row. Chain 2 and single crochet in the next chain space. At this point, we're going to repeat that 8 times until we reach the next corner. So that's your repeat. From here, you work across the edge, you put your stitch markers in, and we repeat again. And you do that for each square until you reach the last square, and I'll meet you back right before the last square, and we'll do this square. Now I've worked the first square, the second square with the stitch markers, and I'm going to work across this one, doing the same thing, chain 2, single crochet in the next chain space, chain 2, and you're going to repeat that 8 times and you'll end up at this corner. So I'll meet you here. Once I've done it 8 times, I end by single crochet in this corner chain 3 space. Now let's take a look here. So we started at this edge here, worked our way and joined our squares until we hit the last square and we ended down at this corner. Then we did our long edge and placed our stitch markers. That's the end of row 1 of the squares. Now we're going to add a second row, but it's a little bit different because you have to join it to this row. So we take our piece and we flip it to the wrong side. So that I'm ready to work back across here, I take my next square, right side facing me, and wrong sides together, and we're going to join across this top. So on row 2, we start by chain 1 and single crochet in the front square, in that corner, single crochet. This is what we call point A that we're starting at right now. The letters on this row will signify the same locations as on row 1, but the directions for A will be slightly different because you're joining now to the square above instead of just working an edge stitch. Chain 1, single crochet in the first chain space on the long edge from the previous square, like the back square. This is square number 1 from our diagram. Chain 1, single crochet in the front square or the new square in the chain space, chain 1. Back to the back square, single crochet on the long edge in the chain space, chain 1. You're going to repeat that 8 times across till we get to the corner. So just keep working on that. I'll meet you here. Now you're ending on the back square in a chain space, chain 2, you come back and you're at the corner. Single crochet in the corner of the new square, chain 1, single crochet in the marked stitch right here on the long edge. Now I'm going to remove that marker so I don't get confused because I don't need that space anymore. And I chain 1. Now I'm going to rotate my work so that I can work down this edge of the new square. This is called point B. Work a second single crochet into that same chain corner space and chain 2. We're back to chain 2 because we're on an outside edge at the moment. Single crochet in the next chain space, chain 2, and you're going to repeat that 8 times until you get to here. The 8 times is because that's how many chain spaces I have. If you're working with a different square, that number of times will be different. Really what you're doing is you're working to the next corner, making sure that you work in every one of the chain spaces. Now we're down to the corner and we're at point C. So we want to single crochet in this corner, chain 3 and chain 1. Rotate your work so wrong side is facing and bring in your next square. You want the squares to be wrong sides together and the new square will be right side facing you. We're now at point D. Single crochet in the corner of the new square, chain 1. On the previous square, you want to single crochet in the next chain space from the corner. So it's really the first chain space. Chain 1, come back to the front, single crochet in the next chain space, and chain 1. Back to the back, single crochet in the next chain space, chain 1. Continuing up until you've done that 8 times, which will bring you back to this corner. After completing it 8 times, we're ready to work into the corner of the front square. Single crochet in that chain 3 corner, chain 1. On the back or previous square on the long edge, you're going into the next chain space. Take a look here. This is the one we just worked into. This right here is the next one you want to work into. It can get confusing when you look at all these spaces. All you want to do is go into this next chain space from the one you just worked on the back. Right into there. Single crochet, chain 1. From here, you're going to go to the marked stitch. Remember, we took the stitch marker out of the one over here so it wouldn't confuse us. This is the second one that's marked, and you want to go into that one and work a single crochet, chain 1, and I can remove that marker now. We don't need it anymore. Bringing our new square around to match the long edge. We want to work a single crochet in this front corner again. That completes D, and we're back at A. And that's our repeat. So first row of squares is here, second row is here, and we're joining them in. We started here at A, went to B, worked B all the way down to here, which is C to D, the short little jump. Worked D all the way up, joining this square to this one. And now we're up here and we're at A again. So you're going to repeat the A, B, C, D for row 2. Right here, joining that next square. That's the repeat. Again, if you're working this size, you're only going to have the 3 squares across. If you're working the larger sizes, you'll have 4 squares across. When you reach this point here and you bring in your next square, you will work A and B, just like we did up here, but we're on the second row. And I'll meet you at this corner, whether it's your 3rd square or your 4th square, and we'll be ready to work across our bottom edge. In this situation, I left the markers in to give you a bit of a close-up look. So this is the first row up here, and these are the 2 marked stitches on either side of that single crochet in the join. So when we work our way back, you can kind of see where we went. We came across here, worked into this stitch marker, and then went down this edge, came back up, and we'd already worked into that one, worked into the corner here, and then worked into this stitch marker. And then we came back down to here, and then we continued across. So it just gives you a little bit of a close-up of what we did there, if that helps a little bit. Now, when you've come across your second row, whether it's 3 or 4, We have reached this point, which was A, B, and then we didn't quite do C because we're going to work along our long edge again. So we'll repeat what we did up here. We'll start with a single crochet, chain 3, single crochet in this corner, and start working across here just as we did across here. You just won't need the stitch markers because it's your final row, so you won't be working into it from below. So just repeat what we did here on the long edge until you reach this corner here, and then we'll complete this last edge of our rectangle. We worked our long edge again, and we didn't put any stitch markers in this time because we don't need them. And we're back to our final corner, and all we have left now is to work up this corner and back to where we started. Single crochet in the chain 3 space of your final square, chain 3, and single crochet again in that same space. Chain 2, single crochet in the next chain space, and chain 2. You're going to do that 8 times, the single crochet chain 2, and it'll bring you up to this corner of the square where we'll work across the join. When we've completed our 8 times, we reach this corner, single crochet in the corner, chain 2, single crochet in this chain 1 space right here at the join. Now this would have been point A. So we just go in here because we're on the side of our rectangle, and single crochet, chain 2, into the next corner of the next square, single crochet, and this is square 1, chain 2, single crochet in the next chain space, hook's getting stuck here, chain 2, and you're going to repeat that 8 times. It'll bring you up to this corner where we'll finish off. Once you've completed your way up this edge, we're back to the first corner, single crochet in that chain 3 space, chain 3, and now we're going to slip stitch in our first single crochet of this entire process. And that finishes joining our squares. You will complete a front and a back exactly like this. You'll either have 3 squares or 4 squares across depending on your size. Again, small, medium, and large are 3 squares across, so 6 total. Extra large, 2XL, and 3XL are 4 squares across, so 8 squares total. Then you'll do the sleeves, and these are the sleeves for all the sizes. So all the sleeves only have 6 squares. You'll need 2 of those. So create 2 more rectangles like this for your sleeves. You'll have 4 pieces all together, a front, a back, and 2 sleeves, and then we'll move on. So now you know how to make your rectangles, and I'm going to leave you to finish the rest of them on your own. In the next tutorial, we're going to add some side panels, and we're going to get assembling our sweater body. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any of my upcoming tutorials. Happy crocheting, and I'll see you next time.